Hello and welcome, rookie card collecting friends. Victor, the rookie card specialist here. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about starting a YouTube channel is the opportunity you get to meet other people. I have met so many people from around the globe, and today I want to bring in a gentleman that I consider a hobby friend, a confidant that I really have gotten a chance to meet through the internet anyways. But he's a man that in the Canadian part of the world needs no introduction. He is Bobby Burrell. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Hey, Victor, how are you?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for joining me.
No problem.
You and I, we really,
I back.
yeah, it's been a couple of years now, right?
Yes.
I would say every bit of a couple of years. And we typically, about once a month, I would say, we get on the phone and talk for an hour or two. And I really like the relationship that we have, which is really odd for me because I am like more than an hour on a phone. If I'm like on the phone for like more than 10 minutes, I'm getting antsy. But man, when I start talking hobby with you, it just seems we just keep going, and it's been a blast, man.
Well, yeah. Well, I first got introduced to you, rookie card special. I said, this is great. We needed somebody in that field. Like there's so many fields that are missing out there. And I really liked what you were doing and what you're doing even now, because now you're sort of advancing into talking about rookie cards and the new part of the hobby. You know, not the old guard. You're kind of advancing. You're almost moving the Overton window, into that space where going, hey, okay, well, let's look at things a little bit differently. And I think that's great, and that's good to be open that way. And very much the same with me. I'm trying to create the history to bring it forward to people, to let people know exactly what happened and what's out there, and to maybe dispel a few nasty little rumors that make it around in the hobby and they keep their way going around, So So anyways,
I know within in the hobby circles, you're known as a hobby historian, and I'd like for you to share a little bit, for those who may not know, a little bit of the scope of work that you've done over the years.
Okay, no problem. I'll start from, I was born at quite a young age, and I started collecting actually in 1969. We started opening packs on the way to the store. Then I collected right up till, I guess I was in my late teens, and then I kind of stopped, but I was going to shows. I picked it up again in the 90s, and then I went full force in about 95, 96, and then eBay came in and it was over. And the really reason why I was a collector at that time, so up to that point, I was basically just getting stuff that pleased me. Then I ran into a few issues where I seen a couple wrappers, and I said, what year is it? 69, 67, 65? They're not dated. So I said, okay, I'm going to look into it. And once I started, I never stopped. So and I've been going straight through since about, I'd say hardcore 98. I've been really digging in deep and finding out, because it really helps the hobby going forward, educating people, in history in school, I got 55, I think, something like that. And who'd have thought, who knew, right?
Right.
Low score in English, high in math, but I've written 3 books, and I've written, I don't know, published at least 50 articles, between Beckett. I worked for Beckett for a year writing, and Canadian Sports Magazine, a few other places. And that's about the sum of me right now. And now the next step is actually at the Spring Sports Card Expo. I will be releasing an app and a website.
Very nice.
All related from hockey from 1910 to 1990, all the cards, collectibles, and merchandise, all in one. And I've been working on that for 4 years, so it's finally here.
So your area of specialty is between 1910 and 1990.
Yes.
And your books and website are going to entail, you don't just deal with sports cards, you also deal with the memorabilia side of things as well, correct?
Yes, I do that. Very much so. The merchandise, the stuff that was in souvenir stands, we don't know the actual dates or the manufacturers. Most of the manufacturers really never end up knowing. But for the most part, it's nice to know that there was a company behind that and who did it. And maybe it was around the corner from where you live. You never know. And it's kind of like, hey, I didn't know that was that company that made that thing there. And that's perfect for somebody to have a little more close attachment to. Maybe an item.
Yeah.
But I do non-sports too. I'm very good with the history of Canadian non-sports, and obviously American and O-Pee-Chee, Tops, Parkhurst. other sports, mostly Canadian related in the other sports fields, and non-sports.
Sure.
So I kind of cover the board, but my specialty definitely is hockey.
And in a realm that really there's not much out there, Bobby. I think you are the unique voice in that space as far as hockey's concerned. That there's not a lot of people covering that, and you are the go-to man, at least in my eyes, in that area. Let me throw this at you, Bobby. I had Dr. Beckett on last month, and we were kind of talking about purist, and that whole conversation came up. And really, I'm one that really believes that, that we should understand standards and principles within the hobby, the passing of the guard per se, traditions of the hobby. But let me throw this question at you, Bobby. Why do you think that hobby history is important to know today?
I think it grounds the hobby in a place where Jefferson Burdick started basically all of this back in the 20s and 30s, and he put his life into documenting this. Now in England in 1920, the mid-20s, you have the Cardophilium Society, so they're documenting cards as early as 25, where we have one guy, who started that with his friends and what have you. So going forward, I'm just the history is so important that we do know these companies and they're not forgotten. It is all a part of us, a part of the things that you collect. It's like, yeah, okay, it's from Topps, but Topps has a history, from New York to Philadelphia. They moved around, and O-Pee-Chee and Parker's and all these other companies, Sheriff Coins, all these companies are out there. And I think that's great going forward, because if we're going to look back in another 50 or 100 years and you try to find that information or find somebody who worked there, it's gone. It's long gone. So thankfully, I did what I did when I did it back in the early late 90s and early 2000s, where I contacted O-Pee-Chee employees or any company employees or owners who still owned the company, or were I would look them up and find them and talk to them and ask them a few questions, so you find a little bit more information about each thing. And the amount of O-Pee-Chee employees I contacted were phenomenal, and the information I was great. Like the first set of Topps hockey was 1954. And I talked to the gentleman who drove down to the train station to pick up the boxes, the wrappers, and the packs. So everything was packaged up here, but it was manufactured in the U.S., not distributed in the U.S., never has been proven. And I don't think it was really. But I think because we were so close to the border, there was a lot of distribution happening between Canada and U.S. at that time, because we used to get a lot of American products up here. So how did we get them? Well, it went on.
Sure.
So the history is, just to sum it up, the history of our hobby is important to me, and I'm hoping to share a few things that might strike a little something in you that might say, hey, that's kind of interesting. I never knew that.
For sure. 100%. Yeah. And I've always felt, there's always in today's hobby, there's always such a need for speculation, right? Who's going to be the next great big player, or what card brand is going to be, the next big hit. But if you know the history, if you know what collectors have liked over the years, you kind of gain a scope of what brands are hot and which brands are not. And so all of that comes with the experience of knowing hobby history, and we can really glean a lot off of that. I want to transition now, Bobby, into specifically O-Pee-Chee baseball. And I'm one that believes and that O-Pee-Chee baseball is an extremely underrated part of the hobby, and I'll get into that a little bit later on here in the interview. But I would love to know just a little bit. I want to give you the table as far as O-Pee-Chee baseball is concerned, and the history of how it's evolved over the years, specifically in baseball. What can you share with us? What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's hard to think of where to start. I have to even go back to 1952, because I think in Canada we were distributing 52. Actually, when Gary Careen, who was the owner of O-Pee-Chee, when his stuff came to market back in Master Auction in 2005, I think it was, he had a 52 box, full box. That was that box that went there. Now, the funny part about all that is that that 52 box was the high numbers only. As you know, Canadian, we got the high numbers up here. So the high number packs actually have less cards. So I think it was 4 plus gum, whereas the American or the tops, well, they're both tops, would have 6 cards plus gum. Now, I remember when they put the listing up, they said this was the Canadian O-Pee-Chee version or, you know, whatever. And then they took that down on the preview and then they put it up as tops because they were going, oh, you're going to miss the 2 extra cards that are in there because, you know, they know O-Pee-Chee only had 4 and they had 6. I'm going, yeah, but they had the Mantle series. So what did you guys do? So they kind of fumbled the ball on that one. So let's start at 52. So, you know, on the wrappers, I think as early as 53, it says, you know, obviously would say tops first, and but in Canada, distributed by O-Pee-Chee. So we did have all the American cards up here. So they were certainly here. In 54, it's interesting that O-Pee-Chee Baseball had their very own unique box. It actually has a picture of Ted Williams on it, but it's on the bottom. It's printed and made by O-Pee-Chee, and very few people know that.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting information about the relationship between Topps and O-Pee-Chee. Remember, O-Pee-Chee's been around since 1911. Their card manufacturing goes back as early as the 20s. And so they're not greenhorns at it.
Right.
So Topps just owned the licensing. And basically, they would produce the cards. Baseball's a little different. Hockey's definitely a little bit different. But baseball, we like baseball. We had a team. We're even in the T206 sets. You know, the Toronto teams. We're out there. We do enjoy baseball, but unfortunately, it's cold in most parts of Canada. I'm pretty good here in Toronto, but I mean, you know, hockey is the only thing you can really do like 7-8 months of the year. So, anyways, going forward, we kind of land at the first official, let's just say, O-Pee-Chee baseball set, like the made in Canada, printed in Canada. So what happened? We had I think Topps had a 598 card production, but O-Pee-Chee would do a lesser amount. Remember, we're 10% of your population at any given time through the course of history. And even today, you know, you're 350 million, we're 35 million here. So, you know, that's just the way it is. So obviously we're going to get a lesser amount. So you have the O-Pee-Chee venture was 283 cards.
For what year was this?
The 65.
65.
Yeah, the 65. So we do have a little disparity in the set. It's almost, you know, double the set from Topps from O-Pee-Chee. So going forward, what happened with O-Pee-Chee that year is there was an error back. The third series, because I found the sheet, uncut sheet of the third series error back. And now what, and most people don't even realize that they're error back. I know they're out there, but how many's out there and what have you. So I have the sheet so I can document which ones were actually in error. And I think that the errors started actually there's double prints in all 3 series, but the errors obviously were corrected. We haven't found the 4 sheets, so we don't know if they changed anything. Well, we know they corrected it, but we don't know if they added or subtracted any cards. So we don't really know how many short prints there are. But every series had its short prints. So there's a lot of short prints in the because they only did, like, there was 30 in the first series, 40 in the second series, and 44 in the third series, something like that. Don't quote me. But so going forward, a lot of people are missing out that the error backs are so rare, but they're not even recognized. Actually, I think I wrote an article.
What was the actual error?
Oh, sorry. I assumed that you knew. The errors actually were the back of the cards had a different player. So the front would have, so it's a complete error. It's not a, you know, so it had to be fully corrected. But that was corrected very early. There's only so many of those cards out there. So having found the sheet is almost a near impossibility, let alone that knowing and documenting exactly how many are out there, because you can read pop reports and see short prints. You can see different things, but that would be too obscure. So having found the sheet, actually documented that. And I think the first series sheet has been found, not the fourth. And I haven't found the second series sheet, but if you do the math collectively, you can see how many cards. I think there was 88 unique cards in that 132 count, and then there was 43 double prints. So there's a lot of double prints, a lot of stuff going on with O-Pee-Chee in their first year. They're juggling things as best they can.
Yeah.
And that year, obviously, we would have 4 cards in gum in the pack. where Topps would have 5 or 6. The traditional difference. The big difference between the two is that we would have 36 count boxes. O-Pee-Chee always had 36 counts boxes. The only time they didn't was the 54. Any stuff we get from the United States would be, obviously a 24 count. Anything in Canada was 36 count. We had less cards and we had more packs per 36 per box. Now the reason I believe that was done that way is because Canada's so long and linear. The distribution, if you're 24 box and a 36 box lasts a little longer. I think it was meant for more distribution, less distribution, because the distribution chain was so not conducive to profit, I guess, in that way. In the U.S., you had 50,000 things going every which way, but Canada, it's like from BC far end to the Newfoundland. That's a long way to ship things and to get things going. So anyway,
interesting.
Another thing about they missed Mantle, unfortunately, and he's on the box because I think on the box you have Killebrew, Mantle, and Koufax.
Wow.
Yeah, they're pictured, all 3 of their faces, and then there's a big banner across it. It's really nice.
Is it like a hand cut thing? I'm not very familiar with it. Like
the display box?
Yeah.
It's not a hand cut. It's just
the display for the box. I got you.
The 24 or 36 count box. So yeah.
But he's not included in the set.
He missed the set. Well, you did get who did you get? Clemente and Pete Rose, I guess.
Yeah.
So you did get we had some supplemental stars, but to miss Mantle and him being on the box is very unusual, I would say.
Okay.
For a Canadian issue, it's the first year. Everybody forgets stuff. We're doing this, we're doing that. Obviously, the stock is definitely different. So obviously printed in Canada. It's stated printed in Canada, and the boxes and everything was made here. I think it was some issues between importing gum, sugar, those kind of things. So they said it was just cheaper. I think that's why the transition came in 1961. It came in hockey, and 65 it came in baseball.
Okay, so 65 was the primary year, the inaugural year of O-Pee-Chee baseball. Now it's obviously there's growing pains in that, but what's the next important year in the timeline of O-Pee-Chee baseball, you think?
I don't know. I'd have to say, well, there's everybody loves the 71 with the black border. I'd have to say that's the next biggest timeline. Actually, I think I even have, see, they're beautiful checklists. There's an O-Pee-Chee 71 baseball checklist. Yeah. Everybody loves checklists.
Oh, yeah.
And 71 for me and a lot of other collectors, just because of the black border, I think there's a lot of more history around it. And then you go through other baseball. You can take it right up to 1990, even past that, obviously, but not too much past that. And but most of those sets are highly desirable, especially now. There was a kick about 4 or 5 years ago when collectors really started to see O-Pee-Chee. I think this is when the grading craze kind of reached its coming to fruition as to, top graded, let's send in and get. O-Pee-Chee was the next step. These checklists were going for like $70, $80 in any condition. The high numbers. So they're all high numbers. Well, they're not all, but and I know that because I sold a few and I was going, holy geez, these guys will pay anything. You run an open auction and you just go, wow, I was like $60, $80 for a beat up checklist.
Yeah.
And that was 71. So that I'm saying that year because of the difficulty, but the rarity of O-Pee-Chee baseball, why I think it has caught on, but I think not to everybody. It's not like everybody talks about it, and not like everybody knows really that much about it. There's not like a website you can go to that'll give you the history of O-Pee-Chee or the combination between Topps and O-Pee-Chee. So.
Right. So one can say then that whichever Topps set is popular, it's more than likely that the equivalent O-Pee-Chee set is popular too, among collectors. I think that's fair to say. Would you?
Yes, I would say that's fair.
Yeah. The 71 to 75. Those are staple sets that are beloved within the hobby. I've always felt that the O-Pee-Chee brand in and of itself is really underrated. And the reason why I feel that way, Bobby, is because a lot of it is, a lot of it today, they say it's all about scarcity, right?
Mhm.
And my thing is, if it's all about scarcity, then why isn't O-Pee-Chee getting any attention or any hobby love, as they say? And I wanted to show you a couple of slides to make this point, and then we can talk about it.
Sure.
I'm going to start with this one. This is the 1965 O-Pee-Chee rookie card of Hall of Famer Joe Morgan and Sonny Jackson. Now, looking at this, okay, the pop reports for PSA shows 61, for SGC 13, and for BGS a total of 5, totaling 79 total population. Now, let's go ahead and let's compare that now to the equivalent of tops, right? Look at the numbers for tops.
It's unbelievable.
Unreal. Now, if you look at the prices for these O-Pee-Chee and Topps cards, there's not much difference. I priced this one out at, the O-Pee-Chee was averaging about $204, and the Topps was averaging about $170. Now, if it's all about scarcity, folks, I think hobbyists are really missing the boat here. And this isn't an investor channel. My point here is to say, this is the type of stuff that, knowing the history, right, you can find stuff like this and really begin to, you want to talk scarcity, let's talk scarcity. Here's a good example. This is a rookie card of a Hall of Famer in the first year that O-Pee-Chee baseball, its inaugural set, right? Massively underrated set, in my opinion.
Well, one thing that happened was, this happened with hockey. Well, Topps owns the license, so they would send up the artwork or the sheets or whatever you want to call it, just the artwork or the plate, so to speak. And they would send it up to O-Pee-Chee. O-Pee-Chee would make their adjustments, like they would have to put French on the back because it's a bilingual country, French and English. They would have to change take some guys out, put some guys in, make a little bit smaller of a set to satisfy. Because you can't have 6, 7 series. We didn't really run too many series here in hockey, only through the early 70s. We just tried to keep it one series. Again, distribution. You can't keep sending a box out to Vancouver every, I'll take one box, I'll take, so, but we did have, supply chains that did go across there, but regardless. So that was part of that, is the scarcity of distribution is really a big thing here.
Yeah. And let me show you one more here. I'm going to show you one more to make this point. Let's go into a little bit more the era that I really love, the junk wax era, right? Here's the pop reports for O-Pee-Chee, right? In all 3 major brands of grading, totaling 2,082 cards graded of the O-Pee-Chee rookie card of Barry Bonds. Now, if you look at the equivalent on Topps, look at the massive total here. It's just enormous.
It is.
And if it's all about scarcity, then it should be all about scarcity. I think we're really missing the boat here. But, oops, sorry. Oh my goodness.
I'm still here.
Hit the wrong button.
So anyway, something to say about the scarcity and what have you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We have the same, I'll try to parallel it to Canada here. So we have something that's issued in French and in English. Some people want the French because it's rarer. So when they collect a set, I want the French variation, I want the English variation, I want both. Then it comes down to desire. So the rarity is outweighed by the desire. So it's rare, yes. Why are they the same price? Because one is rarer, but the desire is low. And then that shift and changes all the time, depending on what it is. But we can take a O-Pee-Chee and work with baseball, and we're saying we got some, these are mostly, it's all top stuff. So, hockey's a little different, slightly different, but baseball going forward, I think you guys are missing a little bit of some great history here. And a lot of people have satisfied their collections on top of that too. It's nice to look into what else am I going to collect? What else am I going to, Peachy's
Right.
a great sideline, and it's tough and it's a challenge. If you had all the money in the world, you can buy every set. It'd be kind of easy. It wouldn't be fun collecting.
Right.
But it's nice to pursue something and have a few different things going on at the same time. Who doesn't want to look forward to mail?
Right.
And I always, my catch line all the time is, who doesn't want to wake up to a treasure hunt every day?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I always thought, and it wasn't until years later that I figured this out. I've always thought that the O-Pee-Chee brand was an exact parallel to, say, the Topps brand, but that's not the case. They're similar in design, in manufacturing, but like the sets are slightly different. The set size is typically a bit smaller on the O-Pee-Chee side.
About, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I've noticed that even some sets or some teams are left out. And of course, the players are going to be short. I'm sorry. The checklist for the players are going to be shortened as well. Like for the Montreal Expos and the Toronto Blue Jays, they give you all 25 players, right? But for the Chicago White Sox, you might only get 10 players on the checklist. And
I wonder who juggled that around, because that's a question, that can't be answered by me. But
right.
Who made the determining factor? Like what teams and what's more popular? The Yankees, of course, Dodgers. You had the major cities, but some of the other cities I probably didn't get much love.
Right. Right.
I'm not sure. I've never looked at it, but I'm just kind of thinking that's the way it kind of would go.
Yeah, and if you look at it checklist to checklist, there's some stark differences in there. But again, the card, like the Joe Morgan there, it's the exact same card design, the exact same manufacturing.
Is the back lighter in color?
Yeah, on
which is typical for Topps versus O-Pee-Chee. O-Pee-Chee always had a lighter stock, and Topps was a darker stock.
Yep. And sometimes they're hard to tell at times. I always, the color of the back always helped me, because there's some years that don't have O-Pee-Chee on the card front. So if you're not paying attention, or you can lose it. But on the back, you also have printed in Canada. That was also a distinguishing factor to see which one is which. But I found that really, really interesting that they're the same, but not quite. And for years I thought it was exactly as the top set, but that's not the case.
No, it's totally different, but not totally. Obviously, the pictures of the players are the same. The stock is a little different. The writing is a little different on the back. I don't think they changed any of the fronts, like the design. I think it stayed the same.
Right.
And they would just change the backs and adjust accordingly. And the boxes are obviously different. The Pursuant, I'm a very big wax pack and wax wrapper and display box collector. I love the artwork and design, and I love baseball. I love every sport, actually. And I think that is a great thing to pursue on top of that. As having your wrapper to go with your set of, 71 baseball would be great. And the boxes, they go for 10 times what the Topps boxes go for. Right. I know the box market, and O-Pee-Chees and Topps is like, $150, $1,100, $1,200, $1,500, $3,000, $8,000.
Man, how would you even find a box of that? I mean, that's got to be, there's not a big market.
23 years of saving pictures. Plus, I've owned a lot of them too, and I deal with a lot of people who have collections, and I preserve boxes. So what I do is I structure them inside with a styro board, and you can almost stand on them when I'm finished. And I give it a nice shrink wrapping job, so it comes up nice and square. So
okay.
It's more for display, and you can sit it and won't wobble and won't look frumpy, and it preserves it for a long time. I think BBCE does it, but not even close to what I can do. Sorry.
Really interesting. Yeah. Another little nuance there.
I've been doing that for 20 years. It's come along,
really? Yeah.
And I've done boxes worth $10,000 empty.
You don't put G.I. Joe packs in them, do you?
No, Pokemon. I stick with the Pokemon.
We all got Duke.
Bobby, I also wanted to ask you about the hobby market up in Canada when it comes to O-Pee-Chee and Topps baseball. What's the market like that up there in North America?
Well, I think a lot of people like both. There's a sense of heritage with O-Pee-Chee. but people, the set, as we talked about, is obviously a lot bigger in the US. And so you're missing maybe some key rookies. You're maybe missing some players that you really enjoy. So you're missing out on those with some of the earlier O-Pee-Chee sets. But I think they're both strong evenly. I would say in hockey it's different, but I think with baseball, people are happy with O-Pee-Chee, but they're also happy with Topps as well. Whereas in hockey, I would say Topps gets very little recognition compared to O-Pee-Chee. Remember, now Topps, difference between Topps and O-Pee-Chee, Topps would release their cards earlier for the hockey season in somewhere in October, November. So they're straight out of the gate. They're getting the hockey in. O-Pee-Chee always, historically, January 1st, they start releasing their packs because they're waiting for the trades. They're waiting for the shift in teams. So they want to change up. And then they added another 100 to the set. Like Topps baseball, we're adding less because of the less amount of people here. In hockey, we increase it. And Topps is 198 and O-Pee-Chee is 264 or 396. So we would add more. That's the disparage difference. Right. But I think fairly even between Topps and O-Pee-Chee.
Okay, that's interesting. And I love the answer because a lot of like rookie card debates per se, I've always concluded, hey, here's the resolve to the issue. Just get them both. Be done with it, right? Oh, I love it.
It is true like that. I think a lot of people, we like to show people our sets, and it's like, I'll use Wayne Gretzky. I got a Gretzky. Is that a Topps or a Peachy? That's always the first question, right? Looks like a Topps, looks like a Peachy. Right. I understand that difference, but I think when we come to rarity, say somebody's going to show their, I don't know, Clemente, maybe second or third year. Oh, wow, is that O-Pee-Chee? Is that Topps? What is that? And I think that there is kind of cool because there's probably 10,000 of those like your Pop Report, and then you get O-Pee-Chee with 47. So, that becomes the rare card. It's a production. Canada's a major, production, card production. It's responsible for a large part of the hobby in that regard. Now, I have to say that hockey has been sort of protected, through the sports card boom that we went through. Hockey was kind of protected. We didn't really get into that newer stage. So the vintage really stayed quite sound prior to Gretzky's rookie year. Going forward, and at this stage right now, we're enjoying a steady marketplace in hockey. It hasn't been varied, and even with the new stuff, there's not a lot of new hockey cards that were 30, 40, 70, 150,000, whatever. Hockey stayed kind of stable, so we're sort of protected in that sense, and as is O-Pee-Chee, but it's opening up more and more, and I think even with Topps cards, I think a lot of people are going away from the O-Pee-Chee and getting into the Topps. It's a little less expensive, but it's still a Gretzky rookie, and you can get a nice higher grade at a more affordable price. And I think a lot of people, so we've melded, USA and Canada as just being North American issue at this point going forward.
Right.
So I think there's that appreciation is really coming together. In the last 5 years, it's been steadily increasing.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Yep. They are not, the O-Pee-Chee brand is not as cheap as it once was.
No.
It's caught up to the American market, and in some cases has even surpassed it. So that's always exciting to see. And this isn't an investor channel. My point in all of this, Bobby, is the benefits of knowing the history, the benefits of knowing how something has evolved over the years, and when you're looking at what to purchase next, I think the O-Pee-Chee brand really needs to be reconsidered as a healthy alternative.
Even though it's O-Pee-Chee, Topps still owns the license, so it truly is like the name of the company. It's sort of like Post cereal, but then they have alphabets, so everyone thinks alphabets. But really, it's Post. So be it Canada, US, it's still Post. It's still Topps. Topps still owns the licensing. O-Pee-Chee just did their own thing. They distributed to Canada.
I thought Upper Deck owned the licensing now.
No, going back, looking at
in hindsight, I got you.
In hindsight, yeah. In '96 they sold to Nestle, and then after a few years they sold it back to Topps, and then Upper Deck, I guess. After that.
Right. Okay.
It's
I
been
got
a sordid history, and it's really a shame to see that O-Pee-Chee went that way. The company dissolves and they sell off everything, and well, I guess they seen it coming because
Was
we
there
went through the boom there in '90s. So,
was there a reason given for that sell off like that, or?
well, I think it was in that kind of stage. I really believe they just built a new factory in '91 there. So I just think it was the downtrend of the sports car because we were going through that bust again, the early '90 boom bust. So it was hard for them to maintain. It was better off just to sell it. And
Yeah.
sometimes it just reaches that point, So 1911 to 1990, was it 92?
Yeah.
So,
And how's the O-Pee-Chee market today in hockey in Canada? I mean, that's the go-to, right? That's the only.
it's alive and well for vintage. Modern, I don't follow as much.
Okay.
I try to keep on top of things, but like I said, comparatively to the other three sports, hockey is low on the totem pole.
So okay. So would be O-Pee-Chee be like the Topps flagship of hockey?
I'd say
You would say, okay.
something similar to that.
Yeah, I'm very when it comes to hockey. Unfortunately, my knowledge is very limited. That's how come I defer to Bobby Burrell every time.
Well, it's not like I know every player in a Marine Man, but I know a lot of the history part, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
Right, right. You don't got to know everything, but you got to know resources, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really important because a lot of people will contact you. They're just regular collectors, and people say I'm not into wrappers or boxes, or I'm not into O-Pee-Chee, but as soon as they get that, then they start asking questions, and it's like, who gets a call? Yeah, hey Bobby, have you ever? What's that box worth? From? Oh, it's like, is it Topps or O-Pee-Chee? Okay, then we can talk, and then they become. I think it's called osmosis. Whereas you don't have something, and then you're at a show and you pick that up and you go, "Oh, I didn't know that was a Peachy. I got to look that up, see if that's what the heck's that worth."
Yeah.
Through osmosis, you kind of get into things as you pick them up, as you see them, as you buy them, and then you learn more. You learn more. I didn't know about O-Pee-Chee boxes, so now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to pay more for O-Pee-Chee boxes for those who are listening, who find them and list them on on an auction site. So
yeah.
going forward, so it is that a 10-to-1 ratio almost in price.
Well,
But
Bobby,
if they're not that desirable, why are the boxes so crazy?
right.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, you are a wealth of knowledge. It's been an honor getting to know you over the years, and I thank you for coming on today. And that's I'm going to wrap this one up. And again, if somebody wanted to contact you, Bobby, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, I am on Facebook. I do run a group there. It's called Bobby VHC Collectibles. So I'm Bobby Burrell on Facebook. You can contact me there. And I'll have an app coming your way soon, and you'll find that everywhere on the internet.
There you go. Bobby, thanks again, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
All right.